Oh, people hate real estate agents, something that Connor Kelly discovered recently and shared on TikTok, which led to this conversation. I've got like 11 points here that we're going to go over in this episode, different reasons people hate real estate agents. We're going to give it a little bit of context, but first, let me introduce you to my guest, Connor Kelly, all the way from Abbotsford, British Columbia. What is up? How are you doing today, brother?
What's up, everybody? Yeah, I'm doing good. How about you, Justin?
I'm doing well. I came across you on TikTok, actually shared out your account. It would have been probably a week or two ago now, because I find the content you're putting out is very honest. You're very direct. You're a normal person who happens to be going into the real estate space and trying to educate yourself on it, but you're educating people through your journey. But tell people a little bit about you, because I don't even know a ton.
Yeah, I appreciate that reshare, man. By the way, that was very kind and generous of you, I'll say. But yeah, basically, I was a plumber for about 8.5 years, and I got into real estate for a number of reasons. But honestly, it just came down to, what do I want to do for the rest of my life? And I've always been super passionate about real estate. I've devoted pretty much all my free time in the last 5 years to learning about investing, real estate, and all of those kinds of things, and managed to buy 3 properties on a plumbing income before I ever became a real estate agent. And yeah, so I just kind of naturally led down that path, and then got my real estate license, and yeah, things have been going pretty well.
That's awesome. And your TikTok journey, like, tell me a little bit about that before we get into the 11 reasons people hate real estate agents. Why TikTok? What have you discovered using the platform? And it seems like you've got some traction there, so would love for you to share that story.
Yeah, well, I watched a lot of Gary Vee and Grant Cardone, and those guys have been harping on, like, not so much Grant Cardone, but Gary Vee always talks about TikTok. You know, he built his business back in the 90s with email marketing, back when like everybody thought the internet was a fad, right? Now it's kind of the same thing with TikTok. Everybody thinks it's a fad, where it's just a bunch of 17-year-olds that dance and stuff like that. But I mean, it's an entirely new platform that will get bigger, that people will use. It's going to be exactly like Instagram in the next couple of years, if it's not already. But Grant Cardone kind of has this philosophy where he's like, I can't do business with you if I don't know you, right? Another thing that he says is attention equals currency, right? So whoever has the most attention in the market, it's going to translate to dollars, right? And that's why guys like Jake Paul are making $30 million a year, and Conor McGregor is the highest paid UFC fighter of all time, even though he's not the best, but he garners the most attention, right? So that kind of philosophy led me into like, well, I know TikTok gets the most reach out of any of these platforms right now. So even if it doesn't translate to business, at least all of these people are going to know who I am, and I'm getting attention. So that should eventually translate to dollars, right? So got on the platform, made like, oddly enough, the first video I made was like a stupid dancing video, just because I thought like that's what this platform is, right? But it got like 1,000 views, and I was like, oh, it's not too bad. And then I made one about a property that I own in Windsor, Ontario, actually. Just kind of like broke down some of the numbers on that property and stuff. And it was late. It was like 7 p.m, and then it had like 2,000 views. And I was like, oh, this is like not too bad, right? Woke up the next morning, checked the notifications, and it was like, on TikTok, if you have too many notifications, it doesn't count over 99. So I opened the app, and it was like 99 plus. I was like, what the hell? So I looked at that video, and it had like 20,000 views or something ridiculous. And that's when I was just like, okay, this is actually real. And like all sorts of people commenting on it, mostly bad stuff, as you know, right? But yeah, so from that point on, I just kind of started posting like twice a day. And then a month and a half later, the phone was ringing, and hasn't stopped since. So
it's wild. I don't really think people understand what's happening on that platform. I always call it the attention graph, which is a Gary Vee term. And I just talked about it in a recent video I shot about how it's always moving, right? TikTok to me, YouTube to me is still the top. I think it's still an unsung hero in terms of what it does for a business long-term, but it just takes a lot more work. In terms of like the speed stuff, TikTok is number one. Instagram was second. I think Facebook is supplanting that right now. And even Twitter as a platform, they're doing a great job. LinkedIn, I think Instagram's quickly falling off because they're trying to become a TikTok. But their business, like the mutual friend I was just talking about with you that we were watching on stage at Tom Ferry, has billions of views, more than like news networks that we grew up watching. And I think that's a fascinating thing. So I'm super happy for you and your growth there. Everybody go follow Connor. We'll share his links in the show notes below. Go give him a follow. But this episode is literally about why people hate real estate agents. And we're going to go into those points. So what inspired the post? And let me know maybe some of the comments that were on that post about why people hate real estate agents?
I mean, like if you go look underneath any video where I talk about anything, like literally 50% of the comments, and I didn't realize that there was this hate for realtors out there until I got my real estate license, but 50% of the comments are, oh, he's just saying that because he's a realtor. He just wants your money. He just wants this, blah, 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 blah. And so, I just decided to make a post about it and just kind of go down that path and just kind of explain I think I explained some of the things that realtors do or something like that. But yeah, I think people have they're really misinformed about what realtors actually do and why they're paid the way they're paid and all those kinds of things, right?
I went down a 27 comment wormhole on my YouTube video, the last market update I did in July. And it was around that. It was around informing them of what we do and that, not all agents are created equal, but let's dig right into it. I think I went on Reddit. I feel like I'm going to need therapy after this episode, but the first one that popped up, I typed in literally, why do people hate real estate agents? And it was, well, 99 of them are commissioned salespeople, right? And I understand that because come linked with that is the greed factor. In your experience, how does that work out to be true in the industry and how does it not? Because I want to have a balanced conversation here.
How does it work out to be true in the industry and how does it not?
Yeah, because I'm sure you've seen the greedy commission salespeople, and I'm sure you've seen others that are completely not, right?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I mean, I think like there's definitely realtors out there that just push to get a sale done. I mean, and I could be wrong in this, and I think there's obviously some more points to branch off of it, but I think if you're using a realtor who does a lot of business, who is a busy realtor, they're going to be less inclined to try to, act in a way that's further like self-serving monetary gain, right? If you're using a realtor that like really doesn't need the money and they just want to do their job, and this doesn't hold true for every single real estate agent, right? But I think there's going to be a lot higher chance that agent is going to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Have a lot more integrity, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think that's accurate because I mean, no different than a plumber, right? So on your investment property in Windsor, if you were going to hire 3 different plumbers, the cheapest guy that was just going to do it to get in and get out and make a quick buck is probably going to do the worst job because he doesn't care. He's probably just saying whatever you want to hear and do it for whatever price so he can make a buck. The guy that, is the most expensive sometimes isn't the best solution either because he just has too many jobs and he's pricing it so high that if you take it, fine, he'll do it. But otherwise he could care less. And then there's the person in the middle that's busy enough that they can still do a great job and they have a good level of experience. But at the same time, they're going to charge a fee, and the fee's part of the transaction, but they're not focused on the fee. They're focused on your experience hiring them as a plumber, right? And I do find that's one of the reasons why we're having this conversation is I've met hundreds, if not thousands of agents, and some of them, you do see that in them, right? You see that they look at every person, they talk about them like they're $1. Right? Or a line on an expense sheet. And then there's others that look at them and like are really digging into how can they solve their clients' problems.
100%.
Yeah. So the next one that popped up was low barrier to entry. So the next reason people hate realtors there is a low barrier to entry. Is this true? And why should people hate and not hate agents for this one?
I think it is true. I was actually thinking about this in my car today, and like we do a lot of stuff that is not in every transaction, but there are some transactions that get super complicated. I'm going through a few of them myself right now, where we almost are kind of acting like lawyers,
yep.
Right? So, I mean, it would make sense if getting your real estate license was, a 2-year long university course. I think that would weed out a lot of the bad things in our market, and people would have to be committed. Like, this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life. They didn't just watch some episode on HGTV and was like, all right, I'm going to be a realtor now, right? Like, you'd actually have to be somewhat passionate about it and decide this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. It's not just something that you're trying in the meantime, right?
Yeah, and I actually agree with you 1,000%. I sit on 3 professional standards committees just because I want to know more and be able to educate the people here. And we implemented a 30, 60, 90-day onboarding plan here at Prime where the agents have to submit paperwork. It has to be approved by the office before the deals even get written. And it blows my mind that you get licensed, half the time you don't even know how to do the listing paperwork, even write an offer, let alone the clauses that go in the offer. They don't even touch that in Ontario when they're educating agents. So I would 100% agree with this. The low barrier to entry puts me in a position where I don't have a lot of confidence in a lot of realtors out there. What do you think agents can do that are watching this to get more educated, so that they can kind of overcome that perception that there's such a low barrier to entry that they're not educated?
I think every agent should start out on a team. That's just my honest opinion. Have somebody like looking over your paperwork, helping, mentoring you. And I think a lot of people get too caught up in, I just want to make a lot of money, right? You got to learn this business before you can start making money. You got to build your skills. That's going to take, probably 2-3 years before that happens. And I think too many people just get caught up in I guess what I'll say is 50% of a grape is better than 0% of a watermelon.
Yeah, that's great. And what he's referring to is typically you're doing splits on a team and compensation. And a lot of agents don't want to split deals with anybody because they got to give away half of their commission. But I've always been the person that would say, I'm happy to give away half if I'm going to learn something or there's value exchanged in the transaction. No different than a consumer and an agent. I don't think the consumers have a problem paying if they can clearly translate the value, but I don't think a lot of agents can translate it, which leads to the next segue. Literally, the agents add no value. They just open doors. And some agents do that, right? They set up the portal, the people find their own properties, they open the door and they get paid. But can you extrapolate this one a little bit? Like, do you think this is completely true that the agents add no value and they're just door openers?
I don't think that they add no value. I think that a lot of the time, the value they're adding isn't worth the dollar the consumer is paying. Not all the time. I think there's quite a few scenarios where that's true. Like last year when the market was really hot and you were listing homes and you literally just did one open house and it would sell.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the dollar amount in comparison to the value that you're getting isn't there. That being said, that real estate agent also had to weather a downturn in the market where he was working 10 times harder to make way less money, right? And most agents aren't going to weather that storm to get to the good part of the market where they're getting paid more for their time, right?
Yeah.
Did I answer that?
You did. But I would even argue during that time, we were running metrics on it. We were looking at the volume of deals that were closing. And we had a weekend weekend just popped off here. The market it seemed like it was super quiet last 45 days. Sales were still happening, but not to the level they were in February and March. And, all of a sudden, deal after deal after deal started coming in and we're like, we got inspection, we got financing conditions. Like, this is fun. You go show 5 properties and you sell one. Like, remember when it was you show 40 properties and you write 10 offers and you get none? Like, yeah. You're not getting, we'll touch on commission later, but this, is a big point for consumers. They think the commission is a lot. I'm like, well, extrapolate that over all of the work that you do before you even get to a transaction, right? Like, I understand they're focused on commission per transaction, but in a seller's market, you have to work so much harder and write so many more offers to even get one accepted. Now's the inverse where you're doing less deals, but the work you can spread it out a lot more, right?
That's the thing, right? So on the flip side of selling, on the buying side, you're doing way more work to close a deal. So I think no matter how you look at it, it always kind of averages out to being exactly the way it should be. You know what I mean? And yeah. I had something to say, but I lost it. But, I think like, especially in this market, agents are listing homes on the MLS and that's kind of it, right? And yeah. I think you got to be doing a lot more than that to sell a home right now, right?
Yeah, I was reading the book Shift. We did a book club internally at Prime just to stay educated, right, and be better at our jobs. And they were talking about seller staging strategies and how that can really help you stand out. And I get it. Like in a seller's or buyer's market, you want to make your property stand out. But in my mind, I'm like, no, this is a marketing play. This is 2022. Like, I think now it's the MLS is great, but my reach is like 5 to 10 times the MLS. Like, the MLS goes like this and goes like that. I get 2 to 3 Realtor.ca leads. I get 273 leads off my advertising, my organic reach on social. And I do a live stream and I get 9 to 12 DMs on that property. Like, there's a difference, right? Yeah. And you're seeing that on TikTok like crazy, right?
100%. The leverage is insane. It's far better than the MLS, right? But this is what I lost. I wanted to add to your point where you're saying, if you take all of the time the agent spends before the transaction happens and extrapolate that, the numbers start to make sense, right? It's like, imagine if you were going to hire a plumber to, repipe all the plumbing in your house, right? They give you the number, that's, say it's $7,000. Well, that's, 5 days worth of work in that number, right?
Yeah.
So when I go to sell a house, it may only take me 5 days, but it could take me 4 months of me doing showings, open houses, talking on the phone with agents, spending gas to drive with your house, all of these things. And sure, maybe it sells in 5 days and I get paid an amount of money that doesn't exactly correlate to the time I spent on it. But if I have to take 4 months to sell that house, now I'm not making now I'm actually getting paid less per hour than what I'm worth to sell that house. Not only that, you have to spend money on marketing and everything. So I feel like it just always finds a way to make sense.
I'll have a comparison that will make sense to you because you referenced Conor McGregor. The UFC athlete that knocks a guy out in 7 seconds isn't getting paid for 7 seconds worth of work. He's getting paid for a lifetime of training, how he prepped for the camp, the diet that he had. Same thing with us. Like quite often in my world, it could be 2 to 3 years of doing a pre-consultation, just updating people on values before you even get to the point. So, I think when it comes to adding value, to address this question for people that hate realtors, it can actually be true if the realtor adds no values. This is a balanced conversation. I think easily in our industry, 60% of the time, the agents aren't doing anything to add value. But I do think that the cream of the crop, the people that I respect, the people I try and learn from and get around, like the Andy C's of the world, are ones that have put in so much work and they almost treat their craft like a martial art, if you think of it that way, right?
Totally.
Yeah. So the next one, and I got a bunch to get through, so we're going to have fun with these. Holy moly. Okay. Real estate agents aren't patient. They just try to force the sale down your throat. Do you think that's true?
I mean, I think it's true in some scenarios, but I mean, I think the good agents are definitely not doing that because I mean, if you have a client that buys something and they're unhappy, that's long term, that's very bad for you. You're going to have to deal with lots of headaches. They're not going to use you again. They're probably going to tell their friends and family how the experience wasn't good for them. And I mean, you just don't want unhappy clients, right? So, I mean, I'm never going to try to make somebody do something that they don't want to do because you just have to, the backlash of that is so much worse than just not getting a sale to begin with.
Very true. And I find the people that do the best in this business don't really sell. They attract a lot of their clients and they end up doing business. And you see this in negotiation. I don't know if you've ever felt this, but if you're dealing with a file, somebody saw your property, you want to call them and be like, but you don't want to call them because you don't want to seem thirsty, right? Like a good salesman understands that dance, right?
100%.
Yeah. The next one, unskilled job. Do you believe that being a real estate agent is an unskilled job?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And that's why the failure rate is, 95%. I mean, you have to have a certain way that you carry yourself that makes people want to trust you, right? A lot of, that could be your personality and your confidence, but a lot of the times you're not going to have that unless you have the skills to begin with.
Yeah. And I do think if you come into this job with the mindset that it's an unskilled job, you make your own schedule. I watch Selling Sunset. I just go viral on TikTok like Connor, and then I'll be all right. You're going to crash and burn because you actually have to basic skills. But as a newer agent, like how long have you been licensed? Sorry, I should ask you that.
Only about a year.
Wow, that's amazing. Your depth of knowledge is there because you're getting around good people. But what do you think are the core skills that you need to focus on to get better? I'd love for you to point those out.
The core skills you need to focus on to get better. I mean, communication is obviously number one, right? I think this one might be out of the box, but I think being able to control your emotions is really big in real estate too, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you can't control your emotions, that's going to feed off onto your clients and things are going to go sideways the second that starts happening. Number three, I think, I don't even know if this is a skill or more a mindset thing, but you have to be a self-starter. If you don't go and do things yourself, nothing is going to happen for you in this business. Nothing.
Yeah. And sometimes it's good to hire people around you to catch everything else as you're blazing your trail just to make sure it all gets followed up with. But good answer, man. And I think if we were like, hey, if I was opening a prime out there, we'd definitely have a conversation. But I think if I was on the other side of the negotiating table, the emotion part, you're already a couple of steps ahead of the game because there's so often in negotiations with people, I say nothing. They give me a terrible offer and I just thank them. And I just don't say anything to them. And it just drives them nuts until I actually come back and negotiate, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The next one was interesting. It said they don't stick to the budget. So this comment was somebody saying like, I have a $200,000 budget and they're sending me properties at 250. I think this is a consumer education piece that they don't understand why that agent is sending them a property that's 250. What would your answer be to that?
Yeah, well, I think right now in this market might not be true in Ontario, but I'm guessing that it is. A lot of homes are overpriced right now. So if you want to buy something at 200,000, you very well could be looking at homes that are priced at 250. I just got an accepted offer on a house listed at 1.3. We got it for 1.2.
Yeah.
Right. So just because a home is listed at a certain price doesn't mean you have to pay that price. And that's just a discussion that you have to have with your client when you start the home search, right?
100% setting expectations, which goes to our next point. They think that the agents aren't willing to negotiate hard. I do find in certain situations, buyers will be unrealistic. I did a stats update yesterday. Houses are still selling for 97.6% of list price. And they'll be like, I'll offer 500 on that $1 million home. Like, totally. Why do you think people have the perception that agents don't want to negotiate hard?
They think that, like you said, we just want to quickly close the sale, get the money and move on to the next thing, which, I mean, for the agents out there that are experienced and I guess knowledgeable, they know that that isn't the method that's going to be most prosperous for your business. It's not about getting a quick sale, right? It's about building relationships that are long-term, that lead to more sales. I think it's like for every person that you do a deal with, it leads to 2 more sales. I think the statistic is, right? And then if you do 2 sales with those 2 people, now that's 4 sales, right? So it kind of comes down like a pyramid, I guess.
No, that makes a ton of sense. And I think it does in certain instances. And people sometimes in this business, this is one credit to the people that hate agents. I think sometimes they work with agents that are too busy for their own good and they're not making enough time for the clients. These are high value transactions. I think the agents need to do a better job in organizing themselves and making sure that they're following up to the level of standard that our industry should have, right?
100%.
Not being honest and covering for other shady agents. So this scenario was specifically, they offer on a property that's been on the market for months and all of a sudden 2 more offers come out. I think they were insinuating the offers weren't real and that agent's just covering for the other agent and they're in collusion. Don't necessarily think that's always the case. There are some super sketchy agents out there though. So how would you answer that in terms of people that hate agents because all of them are not honest?
That's a tough one, man. They may not be getting other offers, but maybe they've had interest expressed, right? Are they exaggerating that, they're expecting offers? I mean, it's hard to say. I think there's definitely agents out there that kind of play on to that happening. But at the end of the day, those agents are working for their clients and they're going to do what's necessary to get their client the best deal possible, right? I mean, there's some gray areas there where, that's probably not allowed, but at the end of the day, they work for their clients and they're trying to get them the best deal possible. So,
yeah, well, I mentioned earlier being on professional standards. Here, it's a massive fine. You could lose your license in Ontario. So like in a consumer education piece, I would just show them the legislation that was put in place in 2017 actually showcases that, if you really have a complaint about this, register to RICO, they actually have to provide the copies of the offer through the brokerages and hold their feet to the flame. But in many instances, that's not the case, right?
Yeah. And I think it goes back to the wording the agent uses, right? Like how are they exaggerating it? Now, if they say that we've had 2 offers and they haven't, that's a big, big no-no, right? Yeah. If they're saying we're expecting offers, well, maybe they are, right? And maybe those offers never came in. Right.
Well, you talk about the value of an agent. That's exactly right there. Understanding the language of negotiations and saying like, just being able to ask the question and use this if you're a consumer. Did you actually get those offers on paper? Well, no. Oh, those aren't real offers then. If you didn't actually get a registered offer, there's no real offer. A verbal offer means nothing because you didn't have any terms, conditions, deposits, or anything in the actual offer.
Exactly.
Right? The MLS is a monopoly. That's another reason they hate us, apparently.
MLS is a monopoly.
I don't really know why they think that's a thing, but they think we control the MLS and we don't want them to have the data, the sold data. I mean, it's out there. You can find it on lots of third-party sites here.
That's another one of those things that I hear a lot. I just don't understand it. I don't understand it. Like the
Yeah.
data's there, everything's there, right? I mean, a house that sells, I get this all the time. If a home sells, I can't disclose the price to you until it's, a registered sale,
Yeah.
right? I know that it's sold. I know what it's sold for, but I can't disclose that to you. Am I hoarding information? No, that's in protection of the seller, right?
Well, in the States, you can't even disclose until it's closed. Like they don't even see pending data, which is so crazy. And in Canada, they always thought, well, you guys just have the MLS and that's why you succeed. I'm like, well, we pay for the MLS, which is why we get the first access to it. It's like if I built a software for my company and I just gave it to my competition, everybody out there, that wouldn't be the most intelligent thing in the world. But I've always been an advocate to share data because my job isn't relying on data. My job's not relying on the MLS like we talked about. It's forced guys like you and I to go out and create a value proposition beyond the MLS. Like it's there, it's a tool, but is it the biggest tool in your toolbox, Connor?
No, absolutely not. Right. I mean, I like to look into investor mindset, actual statistics and break them down for people. And I think the problem with the real estate market when it comes to statistics, especially in a market with really low sales, is that it doesn't tell the full picture because, I mean, our market's super illiquid right now, right? I mean, they could say home prices are down 20%, but if the only 15 sales that month all happened in the starter home price category of that market, it's going to show, well, home sales are down 40%. Well, they're not really down 40% if, the more luxury homes just didn't sell in that month, right? So, I mean, even if the consumer goes out and looks at statistics, it's not going to give them an accurate picture of what's actually happening in the market. So that's what I try to break down for people.
Yeah. You know what's funny? I hear that and it makes me think of something somebody asked me years ago, who's your biggest competition? I'm like, well, there's not a brokerage on the planet that is doing what we're doing, just in my head, right? I mean, even other agents aren't my competition. I'm like Amazon because they want to scale the data, right? They want to buy the MLS, Berkshire Hathaway, put all the agents in a factory, pay them 1%. Well, I'm like, data doesn't really mean anything. The interpretation of the data and the relationships are everything because the relationships I can scale, the people I can scale, Amazon could never scale. They could buy the data, but they can't buy the people, right?
Exactly.
So 2 more, and then we'll get into the rapid fire round, and then I will get you out of here. The next one is the agents lie instead of saying they don't know the answers. I think this is actually true to a big extent with a lot of agents. But what would you say in response to that, to the young, up and coming ethical agent out there that, needs to address the fact that the public thinks that agents lie instead of saying they just don't know the answers?
Agents, I personally don't think you should lie if you don't know the answer. I mean, at the end of the day, you're never, ever going to know all the answers. And the reason why people hire you is because you're resourceful, right? You can find the answers. You can figure stuff out in a quick manner. So, I mean, if somebody ever asks me a question that I don't know, I just say, hey, I don't know, but I'm going to find out. I'll shoot you a text in 3 minutes, right?
Boss answer. That's literally the answer. I think too many people are, especially in our business, get their egos wrapped up in their personality. You definitely don't have your ego wrapped up, which is why I mentioned people go follow your TikTok. The last biggest reason I think people hate agents is the commission's too high. Getting whatever percentage of the transaction on a sliding scale, it's unreasonable. How would you address that?
I don't think it's unreasonable. I mean, I think that if the commissions were lower, nobody would want to do this job because the amount of work that's required to get that commission wouldn't be balanced, right? I mean, I truly think that the free market has a way of working everything out so it's fair and even for everybody. And I mean, I think it's like the top 8% of agents are the agents that really only make good money. And then the rest of them are making as much money as either a normal job or even worse, right? So, I mean, but if you go look at the top 8% in any industry, they're all making good money for their time, right? So it just comes down to if you want to do this and be the guy who gets paid too much money, then you need to really focus in on your skills and be better than the other 92% who aren't making good money, right?
In my opinion, price is only an objection in the absence of value. Andy said this on stage. He said, if I could give you $100, but you had to pay me 10, would you do that deal? The guy's like, yeah. He's like, how many times did you do that? He's like, as many as I could. I'm like, that's the reality of it, right? But you have to be able to showcase and back that up with data. And one of the conversations I had with the YouTube troll was around that exact thing. So he's like, I don't think you should be paid a percentage. I'm like, awesome. Let's work it out. Like, what am I going to get paid per hour? Like 150 to 500 bucks an hour. Probably I'm worth what a lawyer is worth easily because of the complexity of what I'm doing and my accessibility. I would argue 500 to 1500, but let's go on the low end. Let's go 350. Right. And I started extrapolating what it actually takes, the consultation over years, the pre-listing, about 45 hours into my pre-listing launch sequence, then the actual contract negotiation, then the post-contract negotiation, getting into closing, and then the relationship from then on too. I said, and if your house doesn't sell, you still have to pay me. You good to do that? And he just went quiet and he didn't respond after I said that. Right.
100%. And I think just generally the way, I guess, the universe works is you get paid in relation to the value that you provide to the market, right? That's why Jeff Bezos is worth $200 billion. He created an app that everybody uses that we need in society, right? There is no scenario where you are going to get paid more than what you're actually worth unless you win the lottery. But that's why those people end up losing all that money anyways, because they were never worthy of having it in the first place.
Yeah, they were in, and I think the bull market that we were in is going to shake out a lot of people now that we're in a bear market that aren't able to stick through and offer value or shift their value. Me included. I need to stop mentioning Jeff Bezos because his Autobots are going to find me and the drones and those white vans are going to pull up and take me away. But I think it's really made me think about what it means to be a real estate agent. I think the future is going to be very, very different. I'm going to be following your journey for sure. Let's get into the rapid fire round and I'll get you out of here. Up to this point, what is the greatest lesson you've learned?
The greatest lesson I've learned, I think it just goes back to attention equals currency. For me, I mean, if I just keep focusing on garnering as much attention as possible, that will eventually translate to money. And I guess that isn't very, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't have anything, I don't know. It's not very philosophical for me to say something like that. But if I had to pinpoint the greatest lesson that's done me the most good, it would probably be that.
Phenomenal. Have you read the YouTube formula?
No.
I will send you a copy for coming on the episode after. You like audiobooks or paperback?
Audiobooks.
Yeah, YouTube formula is phenomenal. It'll take you down the journey of what you're doing now into the YouTube space as well too. And I think that's going to be a long game, long tail thing. I'd love to be the guy that sent you that book. What do you actually, the next one, how has failure shaped your life?
Failure. Failure. I mean, you can't, realistically, you can't progress forward. You have to fail forward. Right. So, I mean, now I don't want to say I necessarily chase failure, but I put myself in situations where my failure rate is extremely high because I've never done it before. And those teach you the best lessons, 100%. The most valuable lessons that when you fail, that's always going to teach you a lot more than when you win. That's
a great answer. And you're developing thick skin on TikTok, I'm sure.
Yes.
What are you learning right now?
Oddly enough, I'm learning YouTube SEO, and I've just posted my first YouTube video not long ago. The sound quality is terrible. The video sucks. But I mean, again, I'm just going to try and fail forward. I post a crappy video. Now I know what not to do on the next one. Proximity
to the right people. So look up Christina Smallhorn, join her YouTube Facebook group as well. You're going to skip right over that SEO part. When I send you the Daryl Eves book, it's literally going to help you get right over that. Jump on his YouTube channel as well. So a couple nuggets for you. The very last question, most important, you made time for my audience. I want to give you my platform. So Connor Kelly's standing at the top of Prime Mountain. The whole world is at the footsteps because this is going to go to billions of people. What is your message for the people? Do you want to drive them somewhere? My platform is yours.
I guess I would say, and maybe this was the most important lesson actually, is just constantly face your fears. I think everyone's willing to work hard, but people are rarely willing to face their fears. People will literally work a job that they hate their entire life because they're afraid of facing one fear, right? If you face your fears, in turn, you build confidence and better character. And as I was saying earlier, if you want to be a millionaire, you shouldn't chase money. You should chase developing your character into somebody who's worthy of having that much money. And by facing your fears, you will develop your character and build confidence to eventually get to that point where your character is so strong, you just attract money and good things into your life.
Very true. You don't become a millionaire by buying millionaire things. You become a millionaire by doing the things that they actually did to get there. Very, very different things, right? So appreciate you coming on the episode, brother. I'm sure there'll be many more to come. Everybody go follow his journey on TikTok. Hit that subscription, that notification button so you don't miss any future episodes. And if you got any value, jump in the comments. Let us know who you are, where you're from, so we can get you more goods on the next episode. See you, Connor.
Appreciate the invite, brother. Take it easy.
See ya.
Okay, bye-bye.